Hey, Mikey.
It's Michael Brown.
You can try to find Michael Brown.
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
This is the Michael Brown Show.
Hold on tight to your
All right, let's get
dreams.
started. That was interesting. That was an interesting experiment, wasn't it, Angie? We'll see whether we'll do that again next Friday or not. So it's now Hollywood and Toto time. Christian Toto in the studio with us, and Christian has dragged a guest in here to be subjected to my cross-examination. Who'd you bring in tonight?
Well, we've got a great filmmaker here. Yeah, usually I get the punishment. This week I'm going to share the punishment. Courtney Moorehead Balaker, she's in charge of a new movie. She's the writer-director of Little Pink House. It is opening here in Denver this weekend. You can see it tonight at 7 o'clock. It is playing at the Chez Artistes Theater, and she is going to be there afterwards to have a Q&A, to have some kind of a lively discussion, which I'm sure it will be, because this movie's going to punch a lot of buttons with people. It's about the Supreme Court KHOW decision, about eminent domain. It's based on true story. Catherine Keener is a star. She's terrific.
Yeah, she was very good.
If you don't get outraged by this movie,
Christian finally let me watch a screening. So I finally got to see, a screening. So I got to see this.
look at you. The power of the film
Oh,
critic.
it was amazing.
Anyway, it's a terrific movie. I really hope everyone does check it out. If you miss it tonight, you can see it all weekend long, all throughout the week. It is playing here. And this is an independent film. You have to support it. You have to show your love for it. Everyone's going to see Avengers. They're going to see it a million times. I saw it. I loved it. This needs your attention as well. And it's not just like taking your medicine. It's a good film. It's a quality film. And we're going to find out more about it right now.
And I would encourage people to take their blood pressure medicine before they go. Also. So I was.
You could share some.
I was screaming at my laptop as I watched this film this week. So Courtney, I tend to cross-examine guests that come in. So I've got a lot of before we even get to the movie. I think people want to know, like, who are you? So tell us where you came from and how you got in the film industry, and open-ended questions, or I can really zone in. It's your choice.
And this particular question coming from you is great because I came from here.
Oh, you did?
I grew up here in Denver, Colorado. Yeah, I went to kindergarten through college. I grew up in Littleton, but now I think it's called Centennial because things have changed in the past 22 years since I've been here. But yeah, I grew up here. I went to college. I went to undergraduate school at University of Colorado Boulder, and then I transferred to Denver, and I studied psychology. But then I realized I didn't have what it took to do that, because that takes a very special type of person. And I always loved film and theater, so I actually went to graduate school in London to get my degree in directing theater, which is what I did in New York for about 7 years. Okay. And New York's where I met my husband, Ted Balaker, who's now my producing partner. Right. And we moved to Los Angeles about 16 years ago because I always loved theater. That was what I studied, and that was my passion. But I always fantasized about making films, so I had to kind of restart my career, which I did, and that led to producing. And I pretty much had a career as a producer for over 12 years, and I produced horror films for Bob Weinstein's company. I produced American Pie movies for Universal, and I just said I need to do something a little bit more meaningful with my life when it comes to creating content.
Right. So I've not looked. I've got your IMDb page up, but I've not looked at it or studied it yet. So is this the first, what you would say is well, obviously it's a documentary, or it's not really a documentary. It's a factual-based
biopic.
Film. Is that the right term?
Yeah.
Biopic? Okay.
Yeah.
So is this the first biopic that you've done?
It is. Okay. I've produced on documentaries. I've produced narrative feature films, but my passion was always directing. So this is the first feature that I've directed. Okay. Not the first one I've produced, but it is absolutely the first time I've ever made a story about a human being who is currently alive.
Right.
Did you feel like all the work you did as a producer helped you segue into this role as a writer-director? Because it doesn't feel like a first effort. It feels like a full-blooded effort.
Thank you. Without a doubt. No, I mean, I cut my teeth. It's really good to learn how to make movies on low-budget films, because you have to know how to do almost everything. Yeah. You have to improvise, and you have to stretch resources. And I've worked on films from $1 million to $20 million as a producer. So I had a very strong background. I understood how films were made, the mechanics, what is necessary to make a film, what is not. So absolutely, and I brought a really great team, people that I had worked with for many, many years that I really trusted to be my support as the producers, so that I could focus on writing and directing.
Okay, so people should know, I think Christian mentioned it, it's about the KHOW decision, but the thing I want to know is, so you're doing all of these other things, And are you laying in bed one night and this pops in your head? Does someone plant this seed with you? What's the germination, the genesis of this?
Sure. Well, 7 years ago, my husband Ted and I, we had been producing for other people for a long time. We decided to create our own production company called Courtney Productions, and the motto is making important ideas entertaining. So we wanted to form a company that told stories that were entertaining but also could have an impact and talk about something important and meaningful and maybe make some changes in the world. So one day we got an email from a man named John Kramer, who is the head of communications at the Institute for Justice. And he had heard that we had formed our own company and said, are you aware that there's a book about the KHOW case called Little Pink House by Jeff Benedict? The film rights are available. I think you guys would be a really good fit. Now, Ted was very familiar with the case because he used to produce for John Stossel at ABC News. In fact, the case was going on when we were working there. He remembers where he was when the decision was announced. He was shooting, I think, in Minneapolis. And he usually doesn't talk to strangers on planes, but he kept saying, "Can you believe this? Like, has everyone heard about this?" My husband's not like that. I was not familiar with the case, so I read the book, and I was floored. I could not believe.
You can't believe it's America, can you?
No.
Right.
No, I couldn't, and I couldn't believe it happened so recently.
Right.
And the book is brilliant, by the way. I highly recommend anybody read the book, Jeff Benedict's Little Pink House. And I just thought, this is a film. This is an Aaron Brockovich, David and Goliath film. And we considered telling it as a documentary, but I really felt that you can create a more immersive experience when you dramatize something. I wanted somebody to come into her home and come into that moment when she's finding out she's lost and when she's fighting and the neighborhood meetings and really bring people into the mechanics of this. It was a 10-year ordeal, as you very well know. So we talked to the author of the book, Jeff. We said, this is what we want to do. We got on a plane. We flew out to meet with Suzette Kilo, who doesn't...
Was she for it? Was she for the film? Or did she
totally. But here's the thing with her. She doesn't really... This is not her world. She's like, I'm a regular person. I'm a nurse. This is not my thing. I'm not asking for this. I don't want to be portrayed by a famous... This was not...
And did she have some reticence about reliving it again?
That's a really great question. So when we sat down with her and we told her how we wanted to make the movie, and she liked us and trusted us, I said, how involved do you want to be in the screenplay? And she said, I don't want to be involved at all.
Wow.
She's like, that's not my thing. I don't know how to do it. I trust you guys. You are the filmmakers. If you have questions, I'm here.
I like the book. Go.
Exactly. And she had spent quite a bit of time with Jeff Benedict on that book.
Yeah.
So she had kind of already relived it once. And I totally got it. It's like, why to make her kind of relive it again with me? I didn't push it. So in some ways that's very liberating. In other ways it's terrifying because she gave me the most horrible thing that's ever happened in her life to turn into a major motion picture. Yeah. And but at the same time, and another thing that Ted and I made very clear to her, we're like, we are going to tell your story. We're not going to partner up with someone who's going to change the facts or Hollywoodize it, as we say, and maybe make the bad players, more on one side than the other. We want to tell your truth and your story, and that was really important to her. And so that was the genesis of it. It was really brought to our attention, and then we went off and we raised the funds to make it, and we cast it, and then we shot the film.
How difficult was it to get the money for the movie? And without, unless you can disclose,
sure,
who were some of the major benefactors? Or did you have to go to wealthy individuals, did corporations? Yeah. Hold that question.
Sure,
when
absolutely.
we get back. But I'm curious about the fundraising process because that's got to be. Now you've got this great idea. She's agreed to it. Now you've got like a politician running for office. Now you've got the next big thing. Oh crap! Now I got to raise money for it too. Yeah. Hang on, we'll be right back.
You got it.
You're listening to The Michael Brown Show.
Hey, Okay, welcome back to the Hollywood and Toto segment. Christian Toto, of course, is in the studio with us tonight, as is Courtney Moorehead Balaker.
Yep, that's
okay.
perfect.
Got it right this time. Who is the director?
The writer-director.
Writer-director of Little Pink House, which I watched earlier in the week. I spent an evening watching it, and it's about the KHOW decision. And just to give people a hint, I think most of my audience probably knows what the KHOW decision is, but just so you have a little taste for it, it's in essence the U.S. Supreme Court deciding that under the Fifth Amendment, in this case a municipality, can take private property for what in the Constitution is supposed to be a public use that I interpret to be a highway or a bridge or maybe even a school. I might even go so far as a school. But in this case, they wanted to take it so that Pfizer could build a plant. And that's kind of morphed into all sorts of urban redevelopment stuff, taking private property for Walmarts or Costco's and any number of things. And some state legislatures have kind of tried to rein it back in, but much like civil asset forfeiture, they've, in my opinion, done a very lousy job of it, and I hope at some point this gets back to the Supreme Court again. So, in a nutshell, that's the case.
Exactly.
For a layman, that's all you need to know. A woman had her home taken away from her against her will. And not to build a railroad, not to build a bridge, not to build a highway, but ostensibly for Pfizer to build a plant which never got built on her property.
Yeah, it was a really complicated situation. Essentially, Pfizer was on the other side of the river from Suzette Keeler in her neighborhood, which was called Fort Trumbull. They had just invented a drug called Viagra that they had a feeling was going to be a pretty big hit, and they were looking to expand. But they didn't want to expand in New London. New London didn't make sense. It wasn't big enough. There was a sewage plant that was going to be a very expensive cleanup job. But the governor at the time really wanted Pfizer to expand into New London because he was up for re-election. New London was an economically depressed town. Tax revenue would make everybody look great. And so, you know, a lot of people that were on the side of this redevelopment plan, I think did have good intentions. I don't think that these were mustache twirling people trying to kick elderly people out of their home.
You're so much nicer than
well, no, some were, and I think that's depicted in the film too. But you know, Pfizer wasn't knocking on these doors.
Right.
They weren't offering money.
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah, and so what happened is the city wanted to make it very attractive for Pfizer. So what they said is like, don't worry, we'll spend taxpayer dollars to clean everything up, and we'll move these people so that you have the space you need. And so
we'll give you some tax credits.
And we'll give you, exactly, we'll give you some tax credits. So what they were going to do, they weren't going to ever give the land to Pfizer. They were going to hand it over to a private developer that would build stuff for Pfizer's benefit for their expansion efforts. So it really was the classic case of cronyism, where the little guy got completely pushed out and the big powerful people got what they wanted.
All the middlemen made money.
Yep.
So there's one scene in the film that I have to ask you about. And if you don't want to tell me whether it's true or not, that's fine. But to me, it so encapsulated everything about the KHOW decision. You're looking at me like,
I can't wait to hear which one it is.
I can't wait to hear which one it is. It is the idea that private property is ours, and that's what makes America unique from so many other things. And we think oftentimes of private property of being real estate. We don't think of private property as being our personal property or anything else. And there's a scene where Suzette goes to one of the little minions who has a locket on, and the little minion keeps asking or telling Suzette, oh, we can pay you $68,000 or $88,000, whatever the number was, it's irrelevant. And Suzette keeps telling her, but I don't want to sell. That's a lovely locket that you have. And it's, it belonged to my grandmother and blah, blah. She has a great story about this locket. I'd like to buy that. Well, no, that's not for sale. And I think, you leave it to the imagination. I'm not sure whether the little minion got it or not, but it was so like, bam, in your face. That's the point right there. Is that a true story, or is that some artistic
That was one instance where I took some artistic license. What's really tough about this story is trying to explain really complicated concepts.
Well, let me tell you, That does it right there.
Thank you. Like subjective value, for instance,
Yes.
was one of the reasons this story fascinated me personally. How can somebody go in and tell anybody what their property, and not only their property, what their time is worth?
Yes.
What their mental,
the emotional involvement, everything.
Yeah, it's way more than property that these people lost and put on the line. No, I'm really glad you dug that scene. I think that another thing that's very hard to communicate in a film like this is to explain what eminent domain is in a concise way that doesn't have people's eyes glaze over and doesn't feel like you're being didactic or wonky. So those two elements I had to take a little bit of artistic license with in terms of the dialogue, but really getting the point across.
But you did. I mean,
it's also in character. It's in her character to kind of come up with that rationale. Which is I want to back up real quickly. We kind of teased this last segment about the funding. I talked to so many indie filmmakers, and they always the funding is the biggest struggle, no matter if you've got De Niro attached. So from your perspective, how hard is it to get those pins in a row or the ducks in a row?
It's hard for almost everyone, even people who are way more famous and accomplished than me. And with this particular project, we knew we didn't want to partner with the studio because we wanted to maintain creative control, as I mentioned earlier. So we didn't even knock on those doors. So we targeted people whom we knew or had some idea that were passionate about this case and this topic. So it was all raised with private equity. Several. We had, like 7, investors. I can't remember how many, and it just takes time. But, luckily we had a really good portfolio. We had a good background. We had both made things that were viable in the marketplace. We had a really good team, and so our investors and all of them are very happy with how the film has come out, and they're really also happy with the broad audience it's reaching. I mean, we've been embraced by very film festivals, which are typically very liberal. We've been embraced by libertarians, by conservatives, and it really, as was the case, it's this one very rare topic that can really unite people, no matter what political party they align themselves with. So that was something that was really important to us, because what also was hard in terms of raising money is people who had made films. You and I, Christian, talked a little bit about this, about how there are a lot of films with maybe libertarian or conservative messages that people just don't feel are executed well, and that hurt us as we were raising money, because they would say, well, we don't want it to turn out to be another X, Hang
on, because I want to go down that rabbit hole just a little bit too, because that is one of my pet peeves about.
Sure.
Hang on, we're talking to Courtney Moorehead Balaker about Little Pink House.
Yep.
Little Pink House, not the Little Pink House.
Little Pink House.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Michael Brown Show.
Hey, welcome back to Hollywood and Toto on the Michael Brown Show. Christian Toto and Courtney Moorehead Balaker in the studio talking about Little Pink House. You were talking about fundraising, and that prompted me to want to go down a rabbit hole real quickly, because one of the and I get that it's a formula of money, the right people, the right story, and then executing all of those things so that the product is a product that when I go to the theater, it's on the same plane. Maybe you don't have all the special effects that the Avengers has, but it's got the production values that if I pay my $15 or whatever it is for a theater ticket, I feel like I'm getting $15 worth of value back. And I think you've accomplished that. But what bothers me, and I guess I'm just asking you, and I'm venting and I'm asking you to respond to it, is so many people run out and they take these great ideas or these great topics and they don't execute properly, And so it looks like I'm watching an old, I don't know, like something I put together on my iPhone. It just doesn't look good. And then so that destroys the conservative libertarian side of filmmaking, where people are kind of loath to go see those. It kind of reminds me of Christian movies back before some of these other big houses started making Christian movies. They were just so cheesy, I couldn't take it.
Right.
How did you do all of this and actually make a film that's worth going to the theater to see?
Because I didn't lead with the ideas. I don't consider myself to be.
That's a fascinating.
I didn't lead with the idea. The idea. I didn't make a movie about an idea. I made a movie about a human being, and about her neighbors. And because if you start with the idea and make that the first and foremost objective, you will have a film that people cannot connect to unless they already agree with that idea. And that's very difficult to get people to change their minds about an idea when you say, you know, this thing that you've believed most of your life, it's wrong. And let me tell you why. People don't, they take off. They're not going to stick around for that. But if you tell a story about a human being, people can relate to that. People can relate because they are human beings. With this film in particular, this movie was about, what does your home mean to you? It was about the home. It was about this woman who was uprooted from her spot, the place that she wanted to be in for the rest of her life. And so I think that, you know, I get frustrated too when I hear about a film about an idea that I find interesting, but when it's too heavy-handed about the ideas, even if it's depicted narratively with actors, and I can only speak for myself, I'm a filmmaker. I'm not a political filmmaker. Right. I'm not a philosopher. I don't write papers about these ideas. I'm a filmmaker. This is all I know how to do. So I knew, though, because of how I feel about this issue in particular, and about, you know, liberty. I love liberty, and it's important. I think people need to think very seriously about the importance of liberty. I knew that this story had intrinsically those ideas, but it had to be about the people first.
Can I jump in here? I think the secret weapon of this movie, and this is not to take credit away from you, is Catherine Keener is so good. She's so real, and, you know, she's a very attractive woman. She's so buried within the character that you don't see the Catherine Keener that you kind of know from years and years. She just is raw, and I don't want to say this as a negative. Like, she's blue collar. She's basic in a way. She knows what she wants from her life. She's at a stage where she's at peace, and everything tumbles around her. And I think it's that performance which is the glue that holds everything together. And also, the casting in this movie is bizarre because everyone looks like people in this movie. I know that sounds stupid. Like, they look like real people. They don't look like glamorous. They don't look models. Like Hollywood. They just look like regular Joes and Janes who are real. Yeah. And I think that kind of keeps the flow here. Well, in addition to what she does.
I appreciate that. And Catherine is the glue, and she was so devoted to this film. I mean, she really, and it wasn't an impersonation gig. You know, she never met Suzette before we filmed, a little bit by design, I think, which I understand. But she really connected to this thing about when you find your spot and you grow your roots in the ground. If somebody were to tear those roots out, because Catherine Keener has a home that she loves. She grew up in a home with, you know, she got it, and she wanted everything to be very authentic, very real. And she turns out this thing about Suzette that nobody could really wrap their heads around. She never wanted to come to set. She never wanted to be on television. You saw it depicted in the film. They had to talk her into being the face of this movement. She didn't. Catherine Keener totally got that about her. Whereas I think a lot of actresses would have maybe, I don't know, like really built up the emotion, like, you know, this, I'm going to be a crusader and fight for But Catherine's like, no, that's not who she is. She's very humble and subtle.
She played, and I've never met Suzette Kilo, so I don't know. But the way she portrayed her comes across as Christian says, this everyday blue collar kind of in this kind of rundown area that's not, you know, glamorous or anything else. And she played the part such that as I was, and granted, I'm watching it very intimately on a laptop, so I'm like right, it's in my face. I really get the sense, and I'm shocked that she had not talked to Suzette, because watching her go through that, all I could think of not knowing what Suzette looked like or anything else because it's been so long, I just kept thinking, holy cow, she has really captured this individual.
Well, that's fantastic. She's a brilliant actor. That's what brilliant actors do.
Yeah.
And you don't really know how they do it, but you just know when they do.
Yeah. And I think the other point that we shouldn't gloss over, at least I don't want to gloss over it because of my background, is so many people that get caught in these situations it's no fault of their own or anything else. All they want to do is just go on with their lives. But all of the circumstances around them just keep pulling them these different ways. And at some point, something inside of them, I'd be curious about your take on this. Suzette finally decided to do what she did, not because of her, but because of the people and the neighbors around her.
Yep.
Do you think that's true?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that's so remarkable about her as a person, because she had an opportunity to keep her house while other people in the neighborhood lost theirs, and she said absolutely not. I mean, she did what she did because it was the right thing to do. And when she talks about it, that's precisely what it was, the right thing to do. And I think people, what resonates with people all over the country, because we played all over the country at film festivals, and now we're out in theaters nationwide, is this feeling, and I think you were sort of hitting on it, people are just feeling pushed around.
Yes.
They're being told what to do. They don't have control. Right. It's not even about who's president or who's not. Right. It's like just this feeling of, I'm tired of being pushed around. I'm tired of the big guys saying they're for the little guys, but the little guy seems to lose each and every time.
Right. And we just want to be left alone. Just to live our lives as we choose, and don't come in and force us to do something that we don't want to do.
Exactly. I think everyone's feeling it.
All right. Can you stay for one last segment?
Oh, of course.
All right.
This is great. You guys are great.
Oh, did you hear that? We should mark the tape. She just called us great. She doesn't know us.
There's a first for everything.
Yeah, she doesn't know us. She doesn't know us.
You're listening to The Michael Brown Show.
Welcome. You said take it.
Well, I said take it after I get it started. Holy cow. You know, I give you an inch and you just run away with it.
We're like Abbott and Abbott.
We are, Abbott and Abbott. So I just wanted to say welcome back to Hollywood and Toto on the Michael Brown Show. And Christian was now going to...
I was taking over. I was doing an Alexander Haig.
Christmas. I'm in control now here in the studio.
We're talking.
Okay, well, I'm going to get some Diet Coke or something.
All right. We're talking with Courtney Moorehead Balaker about Little Pink House, her movie. It is showing tonight at 7 o'clock at the Shays Artis Theater. You can see it there and talk to, well, you can enjoy the conversation with Courtney. She'll be there afterwards to have a Q&A. And also, it's going to be playing this weekend, all this current week in Denver right here. It's in select theaters nationwide, so we're definitely lucky to have it here. So support this movie, not just because the message is right, because it's a good movie, and that's what little films need. It's an independent movie. Support them or you don't get them. You'll get Avengers 8, and I love Avengers 8. But we need more than that. So,
but that's so true. I mean, I guess what I love is you talk about this probably at least once a month. And now we actually have one of them someone here.
That's right.
It's wonderful.
Okay, real quickly, if anyone's listening on the podcast version of the show on Facebook, and they're in other cities that are not getting the movie, how can they see Little Pink House?
Absolutely. People can go to our website, littlepinkhousemovie.com, and you will see all of the cities where we're playing. Please, if you live here in Denver, go this weekend. I think we're playing in Durango, too. Go to our website, littlepinkhousemovie.com. If you do not see your city or town listed, you can bring the film to your town through TUG, and we explain that on our website. We help you. We have someone on our team who can walk you through it. Just go to littlepinkhousemovie.com. Go watch Little Pink House, and if you don't see your city or town listed, we can be at your theater.
Gotcha.
All right, wait, hold on, hold on.
You're taking control of the show again?
Oh, I'm reeling this back in.
Wildly inappropriate.
So there's something called Tug.
Oh yes.
Oh, you got to tell me
so
about
brilliant.
it. You got to tell me about it.
It's great. It's called Cinema on Demand. So, what the world of film distribution has changed radically, like everything else. And so, what's wonderful about Tug is it allows maybe smaller films that don't have, massive print and advertising marketing budgets to find their audience. It's very free market if you think about it. It's like, well, why should I have a gatekeeper tell me what theaters are going to play my movie when I can, if someone wants to show my movie, if they're showing interest, if there are market signals that someone in Tulsa wants to play my movie, but a distributor says no, or a theater in Tulsa maybe doesn't, maybe they want to see how it performs nationwide before they have it. Well, someone can say, no, I'm going to get 60 people to say that they want to see the movie too. So you have to meet a certain threshold. It's kind of like Kickstarter where you put your credit card in, but nothing's charged until it's real. And so they just have to have an organizer, and they basically, find the 60 people, and we help them do that. We have so many Tug requests right now. Like, it's through the roof since we opened in theaters.
Fascinating concept.
But it's really cool, and it's changing. Studio movies are now using it for some of these smaller markets.
So you mentioned Tulsa, so Pueblo or somewhere that some little town out in the middle of nowhere.
I think the Durango one is a Tug screening. I'm almost positive it is. I could be wrong, but yeah. And
the threshold is 60, no matter what.
No, it depends on the theater. Some it's 60, some it might be a bit larger.
Okay.
But no, it's been great, and so we're traditionally in theaters. Here in Denver, we're at a Landmark Theater. We're in a lot of Landmark theaters, but if you littlepinkhousemovie.com, you can click on a tab that will take you to a link where my husband and I literally explain how you do it, and then you just send an email, and someone will contact you and say, hey, you want to get on the phone? I'll help you put the Tug screening together.
Okay, so all of you listening in New Mexico and in Oklahoma and Kansas and Utah and all these little outposts everywhere.
littlepinkhousemovie.com.
littlepinkhousemovie.com.
And if it's possible, me and Suzette Kilo, if we can come out to help, the event and speak it at it, we can't do it to all of them.
Who came up with this idea?
Tug? Oh gosh, what was his name?
This is brilliant.
Do you remember the movie Tree of Life? It starred Brad Pitt. It was this man who produced. It's a beautiful film. I think it was the first film that they used in this model.
Okay. Interesting.
I can't remember his name.
By the way, after you see Little Pink House, go to Amazon Prime and stream another film. This is your homework, but it's enjoyable. It's called Can We Take a Joke, which your husband directed, you produced.
Yes.
It's about comedy. It's about college campuses and the attacks on free speech. I was tracking the movie for quite some time. It's an excellent movie. It's shocking in a way. It's upsetting, and just given the tenor of the times, it's even more applicable now than ever before. Adam Carolla's in it, Gilbert Gottfried. It's an excellent movie. Talk a little bit about sort of possibly extending that. We talked about this, you and I, briefly, but what can you tell us, sort of any future project connected to it?
Yeah, we are trying to set that film up as a TV series, for like a weekly, kind of like Tosh.0, where you have, seems like every week there's an outrage, whether it's a college campus banning a speaker or a comedian getting blacklisted because they were expressing themselves. And so we think that because it's still so like 2 years after this film has been released, it's still so timely and topical. So we want to do a TV series. We don't know if that's going to be digital platform, cable platform, but we're actively putting that together. Do
you think that there could be sort of from a humorous point of view? I mean, I think that the Colberts and Kimmels of the world should be addressing this issue, and they're not.
Yeah.
And I think there's an opportunity here to both mock it, talk about it, critique it, and process it.
No, we would have it hosted by a comedian. We would have a panel of comedians.
So good.
Just breaking every single one of them down in a hilarious way, and just being really honest and blunt about it. Because I think you have to, because this politically correct culture and comedy is just killing the art form.
Yeah, but
a lot of comedians are feeling it.
It's not just comedy; it's spreading. Look at the girl who the prom dress is a cultural appropriation. I mean, these are all connected these days. But this is what Netflix should be doing, because they've got so many different projects. And they've got endless money.
Yeah. And by the way, since we're out of time, I just want to announce on air.
Yep.
You're fired. Courtney's not. So
I'm sorry, Christian.
That's all right.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
And we pay so much, Courtney. Let me tell you. You'll be able to make.
Oh,
$200 million movies.
Wait, I'm going to go
Did
buy
you see the car I drove
Porsche.
up in today? Be careful.
Hang on, I'll be right back.